Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Stephen.
And this is Indy Fanatics, your home for IndyCar content with weekly podcasts and feature videos. Welcome back to another episode of the IndyCar Podcast. And wow.
Jesus.
What an Indy 500 that was. That had everything.
It's one of the best races I've ever watched.
Absolutely. And so obviously, you old school kind of Indy 500 fans, you may have seen some better races, but the tension was there. We had early drama. Scott Dixon going out of the race by being caught out by caution at such a bad time for him, running out of fuel and just basically ending his race.
Yeah, but whoa. In classic Scott Dixon fashion, he then reappears later on.
And minimises damage. But the day goes to Helio Castroneves, 4-time Indy 500 champion. 4th driver to achieve this feat. The first non-American driver to have done this. And 30 years on since Rick Mears, the last guy to achieve this feat in 1991. Elio does it. And the craziest thing is, Team Penske. This guy has never raced an Indy 500 with the team of the Indy 500. Team Penske moves to Meyer-Shank and...
You couldn't write it.
Wow.
You couldn't write it.
Unless you are David Land, who predicted it. I think the video came out in the morning. There was some
people in the comments last week that were predicting... the win.
Magical moment.
Wow. It's just incredible.
Some people say superheroes don't exist, but I saw Spider-Man today.
And the other story, not just the driver, but for the team, Meyer-Shank Racing, their first ever win just happens to be the Indy 500.
Just a little one.
Wow.
Just a little one.
And it's just so big for the team. That win in itself, the prize money they get, could even fund a second full-time seat for them next year.
And they were saying on commentary, Elio wants it. He didn't want to really kind of leave IndyCar full-time when the option wasn't there for Team Penske. He's found his way with Meyer-Shank. They've seemed like a partnership that just kind of works straight out the blocks. I mean, this is actually the first time Elio has raced for them on track.
Yeah.
And it's a day of first, isn't it, for Meyer-Shank? I mean, what incredible. And one of the first guys to congratulate Elio was his teammate Jack Harvey. And I do feel for Jack because he's been so good this season and he's done so much of the groundwork that has helped that team go. And Jack's still got a bright future in IndyCar. But, all the plaudits are going to be talking about Elio and getting that first win. And, Jack was maybe in the fight for his first win, that Texas race too. If his car hadn't...
he's been there all season.
He has. And maybe it's shown. Meyer-Shank, he was like, no, we're a serious team. We're here to fight with the big boys. And, well, what bigger stage to do?
Than the 500.
Absolutely. I mean, this is literally almost... The race is just pretty much finished. We've seen the celebrations, and so this is kind of raw. The excitement is just there. But so just probably a recap of...
Let's go through the race, shall we?
Are we just going to go through the race, not top 5 moments, or we...
let's go through the race.
Okay.
And we'll hopefully keep it together.
Strap yourselves in.
Next week, maybe a bit more stable review of the 500. But this is purely our raw reactions as we've just watched the 500. So the start. Scott Dixon doesn't even lead a lap right at the beginning because Colton Herta shoots off. And then Rinus VeeKay takes both of them. And it's like, is this going to be the race between these three? The young guns versus Scott?
It was all the talk pre-race, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was the front row and they were just... They showed they had the early pace, absolutely blitzing it.
But after that kind of initial early stint, we had some early pit stops. I believe it was the Ed Carpenter Racing guys that pit. VK was powering out, excitement. They were saying, is he going to be able to control it, with the fuel? And he had to pit early with it. But what happened when the first round of pit stops started to cycle in is Stefan Wilson, one-time Indy 500, the Indy 500 only entry for Andretti Autosport, goes into braking, coming down from those fast speeds of 218, 19, whatever mile an hour they were going at that stage of the race, brakes, loses it coming into pit lane and brings out the first caution. But you see, this was right in the middle of it. And so the leaders who tend to, like we said in our Indy 500 Explain video, want to go in the long kind of first stint to extend that time that they've got in clean air. Scott Dixon was just running it by the textbook, gets into pit lane, and he runs out of fuel.
Let's do an emergency pit stop. So the pit stops were still closed. Because they didn't have any fuel left, they had to do an emergency stop. But disaster strikes with the Honda engine. We'll talk about later Honda coming into its own. But Scott and also Alexander Rossi fell the wrong side of the Honda power because they ran out of fuel and they just couldn't get it started again. Tried pumping more fuel in. That didn't work. And I think they had to do an extra pit stop. Both him and Rossi, putting them a lap down. But for the other guys who went long...
this is also probably a key moment that Elio... You could look, where did Elio win the race? This was a big moment because he actually was able to make it without that emergency fuel. He was able to have done enough fuel saving in that first stint that he was able to pit with the McLaren guys of like Pato, Felix and Juan Pablo Montoya. It seemed to all come on the screen at the same time. And so it was so important that, he was able to kind of capitalize that, and it moved him up into the top 5 and he never really left it for the rest of the race, did he?
That was it. Yeah. Big moment there. Trying to think. Next. So we then had VK going into the lead again with Herta. They were still battling out.
Herta had taken the lead on the pit stops and go from there, but then it was Colin Daly.
Yes, of course. The
Indiana hometown boy, as it was put up on screen. Wow, what a cheer he got when he was leading laps in Indianapolis. And I think maybe he knew that it was going to be a struggle to get the race-winning car together. So he was going to lead as many laps. And I think he might have led the most laps in this race. Actually, overall, top of my head, I come from there. But he led into the later stages. So unless Palou had it definitely wouldn't have been Elio.
So many different race leaders.
Absolutely. So, wow. Brilliant for Connor Daly. But it just didn't work out for him. He had a pit stop after leading the second stints. It was pretty much kept that the same. You had guys like Ryan Hunter-Reay, up there. Well, I suppose
we'll come on to that later.
A guy who did also suffer in the first round of pit stops was Ed Carpenter. Stalled in the first pit stop and then got stuck in fifth in the second pit stop, which had cycled him.
Well, it was during the stint. After it being stalled out.
So bear that in mind that Rinus VeeKay and Connor Daly were up fighting for the race lead at this point, and Ed Carpenter was 80th and 90th. That'll come back on later on.
Come on, the small guys.
Come on. Oh dear, there we go. Come on, the small guys. But, you had plenty of guys in there on different strategies. Joseph Newgarden was working his way up the field. Will Power did a fantastic job working his way up further through the field. And, there was, when we said there were like so many people who could win the Indy 500 and it was foolish to do it, it really felt like for even going into halfway into the race that there were still so many guys who could win it. It probably whittled down to about 10 who could win it at certain stages in that last half of the race if cautions or whatever had fell their way. Yeah,
it slowly went from a group of 10 down to a group of 3. 3, and then it even got lively at the end between 5 of them.
But one guy who looked like he was going to be near the end but it didn't work out because disaster struck.
Graham Rahal. That was the second caution and second and last caution. There was only 2 cautions, which is crazy for an Indy 500. Really, it was an incredibly clean race because just like Stefan Wilson, that was caused in the pit lane, Graham Rahal sent him too early. The rear left guy hadn't finished properly putting the tyre in. Crew chief sent them, and tyre just popped off coming out of the pit exit. Luckily, he wasn't fully up to speed, but it was still a big hit on the wall. Luckily, no one collected him because that would have been a massive crash. It looked like he was doing the best fuel saving. He was going to come out in a really good position ahead of Connor Daly, whose race was kind of put to bed as well because he suffered aero damage after doing a punt kick of the tyre.
He'd already had a tough job because of a bad pit stop where his rear left, funnily enough, had been slow to kind of get on. It was a bad day for rear lefts, apparently. But yeah, just when it hit the nose, and as described on commentary, he drop kicked it into the grass.
Thank God for aero screens. It's just another day you go.
It was just a really scary on board. Although it didn't strike the aero screen, you just feel a lot more. It's still a wince moment, but you feel a lot more comfortable with that protection there on these ovals at these speeds, protecting these drivers. And it's a fantastic, bit of safety equipment that has been introduced by the NTT IndyCar series. But Graham Rahal, I just feel gutted for him. He was running so well, and it would have been so exciting just to see where he would have been at the end. But another point we said in that IndyCar Explained video, it's often the teams who can get those pit stops right over the course of the race, and just that one mistake from Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing, just cost him. And we know Bobby's going to sack him. That guy's gone. He's out. You cost my son the 500, as Graham would put it. He thought he had it.
Yeah,
he thought he had it in the bag.
It was actually the most senior member of the pit crew that mucked up, because it was the crew chief that sent him.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the guy on the rear left. He didn't screw up. They just sent him too early.
Yeah. Can't believe it.
The second and last caution. From then on, it was clean and hard racing to the end.
We
were beginning to see the showdown as Pelot, Elio, and Pato were at the front three. You could just feel that these were the ones that were going to be challenging for the lead.
And for the majority of the second half of the race, they're the ones who had been there or thereabouts within the top five.
Switching places between them.
Ryan Hunter-Reay had been there. And Stephen was you cannot predict Ryan Hunter-Reay to be winning. And he felt like a guy who would have been there at the end, had the right engine. Honda looked like they had the advantage again this year, especially in the latter stages. But he locked up going into the pits, incurred a pit lane penalty, put him a lap down.
Yeah.
And
it's probably a good point to mention, because most of the errors, we said it's an incredibly clean race, but all the errors were in the pit lane. People just couldn't get their brakes working. We had, as you said, Stefan Wilson, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Will Power,
Simona de Silvestro,
Scott McLaughlin, and I think that was the five.
Absolutely. There was so... It was crazy. And Scott McLaughlin was running a great race. Simona was doing a good job. I think she might have even...
She was top 20.
Yeah, sure. I think she would have got a top 20 finish, which would have been fantastic 15, for Peretta in their first showing at the sport. And then in the race, Will Power. Would he have been in the closing stages? Because a guy who also started near the back, Simon Pagenaud, worked his way in the top 10, and we'll talk about that at the end, with a late charge. And Joseph Newgarden, like Penske, if they can just get qualifying right, there just are so much of their guys to do. They've got to nail the strategy to be absolutely perfect. But the race car was brilliant. Yeah. Again, and Pagenaud and Newgarden were brilliant. But McLaughlin was up there. He was driving he was right there with Newgarden through it all. But unfortunately, that pit lane penalty.
Once you get a pit lane penalty, your race is probably done.
Absolutely. And it dropped him. And, it was this fight. It was Pelot and it was Elio. They were toying, and you were just going, the experience of Elio. But Pelot just kept on doing it. And, we wrote off Pelot in early season. We didn't even mention him in our title contenders. This kid moving to Chip Ganassi in the number 10 car, replacing Felix Rosenqvist. We're like, he's a talented, he'll probably do well on road course, wins the first race at Barber. Does he drop off in the season? No. He's managed to get P2, which is still a fantastic result for him. He's going to be gutted that he didn't get that first 500 win, but he leads the championship.
Yeah, by a good 36 points.
Absolutely, 6 races and they're there. But the experience of Helio Castroneves shone through, and man, just
made the move 2 laps to go on the outside of turn 1.
Nerves of steel. It was late into it. He really went kind of balls to the wall with it.
Starting to lose a bit of grip on the tyres, getting a bit sweaty palms.
And you could just tell that explosion of emotion that he had afterwards, the kind of trademark Castroneves climbing the fence after victory. I mean, we were just pumped, gripped from lap 1 to lap 200. Even the middle bit where you can say it almost sometimes gets a little bit dull not dull, but that kind of strategic chess playing game where things are slowly moving into place. There was enough going through. There was alternate strategies.
Yeah, Joseph Newgarden going on the ambitious early stop and then try to get luck out of a caution. You had the Scott Dixon, there was a pack of them trying to go super long. But in the end, most of them had to pay again.
You had the McLaughlins, the Rosenqvist and Sato's holding up for late caution to kind of make it to the end. And, you know, there was just so much going on. And that's what the Indy 500 is. We had so many brilliant overtakes throughout the thing. I mean, just from lap 1, the start, I think Will Power made it from 32 up to 25th on the grid. He just bombed it at the start.
He was on track for a top 10 finish easily, but he just missed
and for the championship
pit stop.
That would have been so key for him. But the Indy 500 can really make or break a championship, and finishing 3 laps down in the end on that, it doesn't feel like the championship's over for Will. We've still got so many races, but
we're not halfway done yet.
It's a real tough blow. And Scott Dixon, like you said, a guy who suffered at the start. Where did he finish in the end? It was just outside the top 10, I think.
I'll have a double check. But shout out to Simon Pagenaud, who completed the podium in 3rd in the end after Pato got a bit loose on the last lap, just trying to full send as much as he could.
He looked the quickest guy out on track, but he just didn't quite have enough, did he?
Yeah.
To really challenge Pelot or Elio at the end there. And probably a shout out to Ed Carpenter as well, because he made the top 5 after so many things going wrong. He finished the highest out of the Ed Carpenter Racing guys, and mental.
So Scott Dixon actually ended up finishing 17th because I think he had to do an early stop.
So he did have to pit again because he was trying to make it to the end, so he probably had to pit again. So
the other shout out, so we had Simon Pagenaud, and we also had Ed Carpenter, as we mentioned. He stalled the first pit stop. He had car issues in one of the stints, being stuck in 5th gear. And he was still there at the end, finishing P5. Unbelievable.
Great top 5. Great top 5. Yeah. And just a great race overall. And it has blown this NTT IndyCar Series Championship wide open. Pelot is now in a 30-point odd lead, I think, at the front. 36-point lead at the front. Scott Dixon still second, but 1 point behind him is Pato O'Ward. So those young guns competing for the championship. Big losers today, someone like Colton Herter. Joseph Newgarden's still there or thereabouts, but he's still got a tough battle, especially after that retirement in the early race.
Because we didn't mention it, if you're all wondering what happened to Herter, we're not too sure either. He was there and then he wasn't there. I think he had pit stop issues.
He must have done.
It's probably the easiest thing you can point to, because there weren't any blatant errors on track. So the winners and losers were made in the pits. But I did want to just say the amount of leaders we had in this race. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different race leaders.
That's crazy. And that showed how everyone was cycling in different kind of strategies and everything like that. And remember, you get a point, and they're all points that add up valuably in the championship. But it is is all about that Indy 500.
Conor Daly did lead the most laps in the end. So there we are.
Crazy. Well, at least he can take some solace in that.
Yeah.
But it maybe is a day of what could have been for Ed Carpenter Racing. Had a very quick race car, but I think the most what if is probably Graham Rahal.
Yes.
But Helio Castroneves, 4-time Indy 500 champion. Like, I don't think it quite sunk in. It felt, I said at the end to you, didn't I? I go, this is one of those fairy tale moments. I think I remember reading in comments and going, maybe it's too much for Elio. I mean, in the Meet the Drivers one said, this isn't Meyer Shank. This is probably for Jack Harvey, the move, the experience that Elio can bring and help bring this team forward. I wrote him off from winning an Indy 500. I think a lot of people thought he's left Penske. That's it. That's the chance of the record equaling 4th Indy 500 gone. But no, Meyer Shank.
As soon as he showed up in the Fast 9, you went, hang on a minute.
Yeah. You were like,
and then you had some people who even went as far as going, I think he's going to win it.
David Land. Applause to you. Applause to you. Applause to anyone who wanted it or kind of said that it was happening in the comments. But wow, it was just a fairy tale moment. If you watched that race, if you were there, I hope you had an amazing time. Let us know the atmosphere. The atmosphere looked incredible.
We heard it. We heard you.
Yeah, absolutely. We heard you over the screens. If you were watching at home, let us know kind of your thoughts. You have just witnessed history, you know. First non-American to win, and the Brazilians over the years in IndyCar have been quite a big, especially in kind of recent years in the IndyCar, have been a big part of the NTT IndyCar series. And yeah, Ed, wow, first ever non-American to do it, four-time champion.
Can he do 5 next year?
You know what?
You can't write him off.
Now you can't
After seeing him do this at 46, what's 47 years?
He looks so fit still.
Yeah.
Look, he looks athletic. Like, it's not a knock to Montoya, but Montoya, you know, he looks now like an older driver in it, doesn't he? Elio looks like he's the fittest he's ever been still. He's the guy that just pumps of energy. He climbed the tallest. I know it's his trademark, but up on that fence with the Meyer Shank guys, bless him, trying to catch up with him. You know, and the crowd love him. IndyCar love people like Helio Castroneves. Just what a guy out there. And it proves it's not all about the young generation. Age, you're never too old to kind of write these guys off. Yeah. Maybe 80. Like if Al Unser Senior came back now, it may be a bit too much, or Rick Mears to try and kind of get 5.
Could you imagine him going back next year? I'm going to try and beat Elio to it.
Oh, geez. But wow. What a race. What an Indy 500.
Well, yeah.
I think
I'm lost. I can't say any more. This is our pure raw reactions. We will do another look back at the 500, as I said, next week as well.
Yeah, we'll let the dust settle from the 500, and no surprises. We'll do our feature video this week on Elio Castroneves because, man, the guy deserves his career looked at. And if you didn't know what a driver he was before this point and the hardships he's gone to for this moment to win this, wow, I'm excited to kind of look into the career and, you know, tell his story a little bit further with that. But guys, it's coming out to you. I think this is coming out to you on the night of the Indy 500. We're going to try and get reactions. So it's raw from that. I'll try and get some pictures if I can. If there is any highlights up from it. But
you know what? I would love to hear your thoughts on your predictions for a certain Castroneves.
In the Meet the Drivers video, I cannot
play a little clip of that.
I'm not going to play the clip. I write Elio Castroneves off at your peril.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just shows how competitive this grid is. And 6 races, 6 different race winners. What a series!
The dream continues.
What a series this is! Brilliant, guys. We hope everyone enjoyed it. And if you're new around here or haven't done so already, Stephen, what can they do?
You can like, subscribe, and ding that bell.
Ding it. Guys, the greatest spectacle in racing did not disappoint. So for now, you Indy fans, keep keep racing.